welcome. Those of you online joining us, thank you so much for joining in and being a part. Those of you in the room, thank you for coming out, man, and just lifting up God. How many of you are thankful that God's with us, right? No matter what we walk through, God is with us, and we're in this third week of this series, Crazy Impossible, and looking at the days of Elijah and how crazy his days were, and the times that he lived in were absolutely insane. And when you're in crazy impossible situations and days, you need crazy impossible faith. Isn't that right? And you got to know that God is with you. So if you're going through something at home or here and you're struggling maybe for years, I want you to know two things. One, I want you to know God's with you. I think that's huge. But secondly, I just want you to know that God's got a word for you today. I believe that with all my heart. And listen to me, those of you that have been struggling for years and months, those of you that have been through some things and you just feel like that's life now, I don't want to over spiritualize this, but let me just tell you this. I believe with all my heart today, God's going to open up heaven and he's going to rain on your soul and your spirit and in your situation, your marriage, your family, your kids, your job, your bank account, your healing, your body, where you've been living broken, there is going to be healing. And so I just want you to know God's with us. And so when we're looking at Elijah, obviously he's been through a lot these last couple of weeks. And if you missed that, you need to. But here's the point, is that God is not looking for people to tell him why it can't happen. God is looking for some people, a mom. He's looking for some people. He's looking for a dad. He's looking for a business leader. He's looking for some kids. He's looking for some students. He's looking for some young adults who will tell him why it can happen because he is God and looks beyond the situation and looks straight into the heart of the matter that God is with us. In other words, when all you see is impossible, you need faith in the God of the impossible. And some of us, even today, you're joining online or maybe you're here in the room and you've been in some situations. Maybe for the last decade, you've been hurting. Your body has been needing healing. Maybe you've been struggling looking for a job since March. Maybe there's been some things going on in your life and it may seem impossible. But here's what I'm here to tell you, is that God is with you, and with God, all things are possible. When we look at the story of Elijah and the days of Elijah, here's what we know, is that Elijah has been through some things, right? He showed up, tells the king, no more rain, stopped raining, and then he goes through this period where he has to trust God, and God builds his faith to believe for the impossible. And when you're struggling and going through situations, God is trying to build you up. I mean, for 200 years in the days of Elijah, the kings and kingdoms were all evil, corrupt. They were leaning into idolatry as a form of worship, and they were looking to other things, and they weren't turning their hearts to God anymore. And because of it, there was this king named Ahab and Jezebel, who the scripture says was the worst of the worst. I mean, you think it was bad before that? It was really bad. And then all of a sudden, God said, enough. It's enough. It's enough. No more. I'm raising up someone to make a difference. And here's what I want to know. Here's what I want you to know, is that God is raising you up to make a difference in this day and age. I know it's tough. I know things are weird. I know things are different. I know at home and here, you've been going through a season in your marriage and maybe even in your finances. But here's what I'm telling you, is that God is speaking and he's saying the heavens are going to open up and the rains of my blessings and favor and miracles are going to flow in your life. Get ready and look to me and don't worry. Don't have fear, but have faith in me. So our study kind of brings us to this point where it's been 3.5 years. I mean, think about this for just a second. 3.5 years, Elijah said, no more rain. 3.5 years, there was no rain. There was nothing. Crops were dying. People were struggling. It was really difficult. You got to think that there's tension in the homes. There's all kind of stuff going on. 3.5 years, there was a drought. 3.5 years, they were struggling. There was dryness. There was difficulty for God's people. And God said, it's time. 3.5 years is enough. 3.5 years, it's over. And I kind of feel like prophetically, that's exactly what God's saying. Hey, for some of you, I know it's been 10 years. Today is over. It's time. It's time for a miracle. It's time for a healing. It's time for provision. It's time for a job. It's time for restoration. Today is the day. So here's what I want you to do. Yeah, go ahead. What I want you to do is this. Before we dive into all this stuff, because I got a lot to give you, but before we dive in, I need you to flip the knob in your spirit a little bit and say, I'm here to receive, and I'm here today to receive a miracle, and today I'm leaving and my marriage is different. I need you to just expect it, right? Just start expecting it. When I leave here, I'm going to get a call this week and I'm going to get a job. I'm going to leave here and I don't know how, I don't know what, but my healing is coming. And physically, I'm going to walk out of here a new man because I just believe that God's here and he's brought us here to bring the rain. Got it? And so here we are 3.5 years in 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 1 says, after a long time in the third year, the word of the Lord came to Elijah. He said, go and present yourself to Ahab And then God said this, and I will send rain. I will send rain. It's key. God says, I'm going to be the one to send the rain. And I want you to know, whatever difficulty you're in, whatever struggle you're in, whatever season you're in, the answer isn't a new job. The answer isn't found in things or something you can say or do or people you can gather around. The answer is God will. And God will. He said, I will. And so know this, and this is just to encourage you, your greatest difficulties happen right before your greatest breakthroughs. Your greatest difficulties happen right before your greatest breakthroughs. There is a breakthrough that is going to happen today, online, at home, in your house. There's a breakthrough that's going to happen in this room. There's a breakthrough that's going to happen. Come on, there's a breakthrough. Make that switch in your spirit and say, you know what? God's going to do it today. I'm leaving today different from when I walked in. I'm not leaving touched. I'm leaving changed. And there's a difference. God says, I will bring the rain. I will. I will. In other words, we need God. God's the one that does it. He says, I know it's been a long season, dry season, difficult season. You lost your job. You've struggled here, man. You've been hurting for 10 years. Your health, doctor said there's no way. I know all that. But God says, I will bring the rain. I will bring the rain. But he also said this in the same verse. If you look in verse 1, he says, go and present yourself. He says this to Elijah. In other words, he's saying, I'm going to do the miracle, but you still got a job to do on your end. So Elijah, like if you look at it, I mean, Elijah could have, done a lot of things, but the gap between the two, the promise and the provision, was pretty big. And what God was saying was, I'm going to bring the miracle, but you still got a job to be. You got to be obedient. God works in partnerships. Have you ever noticed that? Even from the beginning of time when he created the earth and he created the animals and the beasts of the field, he turned to Adam and he said, Adam, I want you to name the animals. You don't think that God who created the animals can name the animals? Like, you don't think that? Of course he can. But from the beginning of time, he involves man in what God is doing. And what you do matters. And so you got to recognize, even the woman, in 2 Kings, the woman who needed a miracle, and Elisha shows up and says, go get all the jars you can. Go get all the vessels. You've heard this story. Go get all the vessels. And it was up to her. And the miracles came and filled every jar that she got. That's the miracle limit. In other words, God involved her in that. Moses stepped out in the water, put his stick in the ground in the water. Moses had a part to play. Peter steps out on the water and Jesus said, come. You can walk on water. But Peter still had to take the step. In other words, there is a job that you and I take. There's a step. There's a moment. Your obedience matters. Your love matters. Worship matters. Your attendance matters. It's saying, God, I'm going to do the natural and you're going to handle the super. In other words, know this, is that your job is the natural. God's job is the super. I think sometimes here's what happens. What happens is, in our situations and difficulties, what happens is we sometimes sit around and we're praying and we're going, man, we'll even talk to our spouse in bed. We're like, man, I don't know. We just need a move of God. I don't know what we're going to do. We need God. I think sometimes God's in heaven going, I need a move of man. I need to know what they're really relying on. I need to know if they're going to be obedient. I need to know. And it isn't that God needs us to do the super. God needs us to do the natural. That's the obedience part. Whatever he's asked you to do in his word, whatever he's spoken to you to do, you got to line yourself up with God's word. And then God brings the super. The supernatural happens when we do our part. God does his part. But then think about this, because in verse 1, Elijah gets a promise from God. What was the promise? I will bring rain. So between the promise and the provision is this massive gap. And I want you to understand that this gap between God's promise and God's provision requires your perseverance. It's not going to be easy. There's going to be difficulties. There's going to be struggles. And some of you are in the middle of that gap between the promise that your marriage was going to be healed, the promise between your kids are going to come back to know God, the promise that I'm going to take care of you in your retirement, the promise that I'm going to heal your body. There's a gap between what God spoke and the provision, and that gap is perseverance. That gap is trust. It's faith. I mean, think about Elijah. He heard this in verse 1, that I will bring rain. Well, between verse 1 and verse 41, which is where we're about to go, there's a lot of verses there. There's 40 verses where he has to go find Obadiah and tell Obadiah, hey, I need to talk to Ahab. I know he wants to kill me, but go find him, set this up. So then he goes and meets with Ahab, knowing that him and Jezebel want to kill him. He goes and does that, and then he says, hey, I want to talk to all the prophets of Baal, all the prophets of Asherah. They all come together. Now he's got 850 prophets, and then he tells the whole nation, quit wavering. You remember this? We talked about this last week. Quit wavering. Make a decision. If Baal's your God, then go all in. Serve the God of pleasure. If God's God, then serve him, but go all in one way. None of this straddling the fence stuff. And he tells them that. So there's a lot going on. Then he shows up and they're calling on the God of fire, and then he calls on God, and then boom, the fire falls. It's amazing. And I mean, you're thankful that God comes through when we need him most. So God comes through for them, and in this season between the promise and the provision is perseverance. And God's asking you not to get distracted. Listen to me. Don't get discouraged. Don't get distracted. Don't get derailed. Don't get sidetracked and change your priorities. Understand what God wants to do. And for some of us, we're in this gap between the promise and the provision. And I want to talk to you today about the fact that it's about to rain, and God's saying the miracle's coming, the healing's coming, the provision's coming, the job's coming. I just believe it with all my heart. God's going to do a miracle in this place, at home, right where you are, in this place. So make that switch right now. Expect to leave here different from when you came in. You need to join me. Listen, if I'm talking to you, talk to me, because I'm telling you right now, God's wanting to stir something up in you. Some of you have been dead. Some of you have been dry. Some of you have been discouraged in situations, and God's saying, flip the switch and start expecting. You don't have to feel jack. Look, there's a lot of times I don't feel nothing, but my faith is aligned with, I know God said it, and I'm going to walk in it. And so I want to give you a couple things from this story that starts in verse 41. You're going to love this. Ready? Here we go. Number one, the thing that you got to realize in this promise to provision gap. Number one, position yourself for the promise by prioritizing for his presence. You got to prioritize the presence of God. And here's what I'm trying to say, man. Listen, you got to position yourself to say, God, I need you. God, this isn't about me. My marriage, what my marriage needs most is counseling. That's good. But God, I need you more than that. God, I don't need her to straighten up more than I need you in the middle of us. God, I need him to do this, but more than I need him to do this, I need you in the middle of this marriage. God, I need you in my finances. God, I'm going to do my part to look for a job, but God, I need your presence in this. I need you to walk with me when I turn in an application. I need you to guide me with where I'm going online. And you need the presence of God. And Elijah understood this in every situation, starting back in chapter 17. You remember this? Starting back in chapter 17, he's praying. God provides a brook. He's praying meals by ravens. Come on. I mean, think about this for just a second. Every time he prays, then he goes to this widow's house, and all of a sudden this lady is there. The flour never runs out. The oil never runs dry. Why? Because Elijah's saying, my God's got this. I mean, his presence is with me no matter what I'm without. God's got it. So what Elijah's showing us in chapter 17, 18, and 19 is position yourself for the promise by prioritizing the presence of God in whatever area and drought you're in. So verse 42 says this, Ahab went off to eat and drink. Picture that for just a moment. He said the rain's coming. Ahab went off to eat and drink, but Elijah climbed to the top of Carmel, bent down to the ground, and put his face between his knees. It's very important. So Ahab went to go eat and drink. Elijah had to separate himself. Listen, he had to humble himself. He got on his knees and he set himself in a position, put his head between his knees and said, I ain't moving here until your presence shows up. This nation needs rain. They needed rain. So Elijah said, God, I need your attention. God, I need you in the middle of this dryness, in the middle of this drought. So what did Elijah do? Separated himself. Some of us are going to have to not do some things we've done in the past and say, God, I need you more than I need that. That isn't a sin. That is not wrong. And most people, it's fine for them to do it. It's fine. There's nothing biblically wrong. But for me, I'm separating myself from the crowd. I no longer live for that. And I pull over here because I need you more than I need that. And I need you to know I need your attention right now. And some of you, God's dealing with you to separate yourself and you don't even know if it's spiritual. Oh, it's spiritual. It's positioning yourself to prioritize his presence more than stuff. So Elijah separated himself. Ahab went and ate. Elijah came over here and says, you go eat and do what you got to do. I can't do all that. There's nothing wrong with eating, but I can't do it. I'm getting down right now. He humbled himself. He got down. Some of you need to realize the miracle comes. You got to start living in that miracle and making it less about you. In other words, let's just talk about your marriage for just a second. You need to start loving your spouse even when they're unlovable. And what you wish they would do, you need to start doing. In other words, don't wait for them to act right before you start treating them right. Come on, you got to humble yourself and say, it's not even about me. I don't have to be right or wrong. Because some of you are wanting to be right or wrong with how your job cut you off. I want to be right on my boss shouldn't have. Quit trying to be right or wrong. What you need to be is just, God, I need you to heal it. I don't care who's right and I don't care who's wrong. I just need you in the middle of it. So Elijah knelt down. Humbled himself. God, this isn't even about me. I can't make it rain. Only you can make it rain. Knelt down. And then he set himself. He said, I ain't moving here until you come through. I'm not moving. I'm not moving. So Elijah climbed to the top of Carmel, bent down on the ground, put his face between his knees. And God is calling you to make prayer a priority in your situation, to position yourself to say, God, I need you. And here's what I'm trying to say. Prayer is more about a relationship with God than it is a request to God. Sometimes the only time we pray is when we go, God, you know I need you. God's going, oh, now you're here. Right? In other words, prayer is more about a relationship with God. Some of you need to stir that relationship up and spend time in prayer with God, even when you don't need nothing. Because prayer is more about that relationship, that stirring. And we were trying to teach our girls this early on, and we're trying to ask them to pray in every situation, every service, every night when we put them to bed when they were young, all the way to now. Even now, we pray with them every night. And, on the way to school, we'll do devotions, and we'll pray every single day. And then everything. I mean, just prayer. Even before a meal, we pray. Because I want them to know, turn to God. You need God's presence more than anything in your life. This is what you need. This is a priority for us. And so we were trying to teach the girls to pray, and sometimes they would be a little shy about it. They'd pray, and they'd just say, God, thank you for this food. Let's eat. And it would be that short. It's all good. But we were just saying, hey, let's learn to pray. Don't be scared to pray. Well, I don't know what to say. I said, well, just start thanking God. It's fine. So we sit at a table. We start praying, or we start about to eat, and I'm hungry. I mean, the food's smelling good. And Avery sits down, and I go, okay, I got this, guys. And Avery grabs my hand and goes, no, Dad, I got this one. I said, oh, you gonna pray? She goes, yeah, I want it. I said, okay. So we all close our eyes, and Avery starts saying, God, I thank you for this table. I thank you for this plate. I thank you for this food. I thank you for my chair. I thank you for my mom. I thank you for my dad. I thank you for my sissy. I thank you for this house. I thank you for this roof. I thank you for my bed. I thank you for my stuffed animals. Yeah, I was proud of her. And then she goes, and God, I thank you for that boat that took those animals. And I thank you that those animals knew to walk in 2 by 2. And I thank you for giving us another chance. God, I thank you for those 3 boys. I don't even remember their names, but they wouldn't bow. And you were with them in the fire. God, I thank you for the cross. I thank you. I thank you. I thank you. I thank you. Now, I was proud, but I was also a little bit hungry. She's just going to keep going. And God, I thank you for my TV. I thank you for my cartoons. I'm just like, dude, this girl ain't never gonna quit. And like, I'm sitting here like this, my food's getting cold, I'm starving, my stomach growling, and I don't even know what to do. And I think, well, surely she's gonna run out of stories, right? She's gonna run out of things that she knows, because she's a girl praying through everything she ever knew. And then she starts over. And God, I thank you for this table. And I thank you for this plate. And I thank you for my food. And I thank you for my mom. And I knew she's going to keep, it's a never-ending cycle. This girl's going to keep going, and we ain't ever going to get to eat. Man, I got to do something about this. So I just put my hand on her back, and I said, amen. That was awesome, baby. She's still praying under me, congratulating her. And I'm going, that was so good. Let's eat. Are you hungry? Let's go. Here's my question. Some of you, my question is, how hungry are you? How hungry are you for the miracle, for the breakthrough? How hungry are you for the presence of God? Because when you're really hungry, you'll step out and stop some things and get yourself in position and get ready. God's looking for someone who's hungry, because when you pray, you say, I'm going to set myself and I ain't quitting until the miracle comes. You remember Hannah in the Bible? She prayed until her belly, she felt the kick in her belly. Remember Paul and Silas? They prayed until there was walls crumbling where they were in prison. Remember Elijah? He prayed until the skies started rumbling. And what I'm here to tell you is you need to begin to position yourself to say, God, my marriage needs you. My job needs you. My future needs you. My body, the healing, the struggle, I need you. This dry place I'm in, this drought I'm in, I need you more than anything. And what you pray for reflects what you believe about God. Now, we can all say God answers prayers, God does big things, right? We can all say that. I say it. But what you pray for really reflects what you truly believe deep down in here. I'll give you both sides of the coin on this one. So in other words, if you don't believe that God really can do it, then you won't pray except for maybe as a last Hail Mary. You won't pray at all, or you just pray that, man, I don't even know if God's going to do this. Because if you really thought he would, you would. Or if you pray really small prayers, what you're saying is, I believe God does some little things, but some of these big things, it's just, that's the way life is. Life just kicks us sometimes and we have to take it. But let's flip the coin over. If you believe God answers prayers, somebody's got to hear this. If you believe he is almighty, if you believe he's all powerful, if you believe he's all loving, if you believe he really can, that he's bigger than anything that you face, if you really believe that he owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, if you believe that there is nothing more powerful than him, if you really believe he can do the impossible, then all of a sudden it changes how you pray, when you pray, what you pray. Why? Because you know that God can no matter what the world is saying. See, Elijah believed God's promise. Elijah believed God would. So you know what Elijah did? He positioned himself to say, before I do anything else, I need your presence. I can't do it. You can. I know the promise, but I need you. So number one, position yourself for the promise by prioritizing for his presence. Number two, get this. I'm telling you, some of you need to hear this next one. Believe what you sense spiritually over what you see physically. Believe what you sense spiritually over what you see physically. I know what you're looking at. I know it looks hopeless. I know. I get it. There's more zeros in your bank account than anything, right? And it's just nothing. I get it. There's more bills on your desk than what you can pay. I understand that your body's been hurting every day for 10 years. But quit looking at what you see physically and start listening to what God is speaking to you spiritually. This is why I said, flip that switch this morning. Make that dial. Tune it into God, because you're going to leave here today and there's going to be provision. There's going to be rain. There's going to be healing. There's going to be a miracle that happens in your life, and God is going to do it today. But you got to start listening to what you sense spiritually. Quit looking at what you see physically. What are you looking at? Hebrews even tells us. Listen, Hebrews says faith is like the substance of things that we hope for. But here's the key. It's the evidence of things what? Unseen. You're not always going to see what God says. God's saying, look, I've got this, but you're not going to see it. And there's going to be struggle. You know, 5 times in the Bible tells us the just shall live by faith. Not that the just shall live by feelings or finances. Come on. Or live by facts or friends. But the just shall live by, come on, say it with me, faith. Where is your faith when you see nothing happening but God's whispering to you going, I got the job for you? Where is your faith when he says, hey, I got you. I'm going to heal your body. I got this. Don't worry about your marriage. I'm going to come through. I know your kids have walking off from the Lord, but I'm going to bring them back. You keep praying. You keep setting yourself. Keep prioritizing my presence in your home. Come on. I'm going to keep them right. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. So Elijah, believe what you sense spiritually over what you see physically. And let me just say that your proximity to God determines what you pick up from God. Some of you are going, well, what if I don't sense anything? Well, your proximity to God determines what you pick up from God. That's why I started with number one, positioning yourself to prioritize his presence. Because if you will prioritize his presence, then you're going to sense something spiritually that maybe you won't see physically. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Back up one verse. We're in chapter 18. I just read 42. Let's back up 41. We'll catch up 42, and then we'll go one more into 43. And you're going to see this play out. You ready? Elijah. So if you're at home, come on, stay with us. Open up the word of God. Look at it with us. Here we go. And Elijah said to Ahab, go and eat and drink, for there is the sound. Somebody needs to listen to what God is saying. There is the sound of a heavy rain. You know what the King James says? If you have the King James, then you see this. It says, I hear the sound of the abundance of rain. It's not a little bit, it's a lot of bit. It's not a little bit, it's a lot of bit. And I'm here to tell you right now that the abundance of rain is coming. Elijah says, go eat and drink. I got this because I already know in my spirit. I know right now the sun's up. There ain't no clouds anywhere. I got this, but I'm telling you, there was a sound in my heart. I sensed something in my spirit. I sensed something about our marriage. I sensed something about our finances. I sensed something about the future of our nation. Come on. I sensed something. I know what it looks like. I can't look at that because I sense it. So Ahab went off to eat and drink. But Elijah separated himself, bent down to the ground, put his face between his knees. He humbled himself. He started praying and prioritizing the presence of God. So he told his servant, he said, hey, here's what I need you to do. I need you to go up and look. And he went up and looked, and there was nothing there, he said. 7 times Elijah said, go back. So let me just show you what this looks like. Lance, come here. Come on. Come up here. So all of a sudden, he's sitting there and he goes, okay, look, I feel something, Lance. I feel it. God's doing something. He's spoken something over my heart. I need you to go check. I need you to go check. I sense it. I need you to run as far as you can up to the top of the mountain. And I need you to go see if there's rain because I feel something. I hear the sound of rain, the abundance of rain. Run, go. So he runs. So his servant runs and he runs and he's young. So it doesn't hurt him like it would hurt me. Otherwise I'd preach while I run up there, but I'd be out of breath. I'm out of breath and I'm not even running. Okay, so he runs and he's looking, but listen to me. Don't worry about him. Look up here. This is huge. He's just going to see if there's rain. I'm here to tell you right now, there ain't nothing. He's about to come tell me that. He's going to get up there. He's going to look and he's going to come back. He's checking. And so then he comes, listen to this. Listen. There was no storm. There was nothing yet. There was no sun. There was no cloud now, just sun. There was no rain. There was nothing. There was no storm. There was no rain, but Elijah said, I feel something. Some of you feel more distant from your spouse than ever before. Some of you lost your job in March and you haven't had one interest of a job opening for you. In other words, everywhere that you look, there is no cloud in the sky. The blessings, the miracle are not there. And he turned to his servant and he goes, okay, what'd you see? What'd you see? You got to tell me you saw something. I'm telling you, I heard the sound. What is up there?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Nothing.
There's nothing.
There's nothing out there.
So Elijah had a choice to make. Am I going to quit believing what I sensed in my spirit? Okay, come on. Am I going to quit praying for my marriage just because my spouse? Am I going to quit believing for a job just because? What am I going to do? You know what Elijah said? Go again. And he said, go run up there again because I'm telling you there's something here. I ain't moving. I'm not moving this spot, God, until you come. And I need you. I need you. I need you. I need you. See, here's the thing. Listen, nobody else heard the sound. It was just Elijah. Listen to it. Elijah's servant didn't hear the sound. He didn't see nothing. Ahab didn't hear the sound of rain. Ahab just went over there to go eat and drink. Somebody listen. Sometimes in your life, you're going to hear God whisper, and I'm coming through for you. And no one around you is going to believe you. They're not going to hear it. They're not going to know it. They're not even going to stand with you because they're going, you need to leave that fool. You need to move. You need to go. You need to do. You just need to put on a brace and live the rest of your life in pain. And they don't believe you because no one else heard it. But if you know that you heard it, if you know that God spoke it, you keep believing. And his servant comes back. What'd you see?
There's nothing there.
There's nothing there. I don't know. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because I know what I heard. I know what God spoke about my kids. I know what he told me about my future. I know what he told me about my finances. I know what he told me. I know what he told me. I know what he told me. So you know what? I don't want to listen to what I see. I don't want to listen to the physical. I'm listening right now to the Spirit of God that says this. And so here's what he says. Listen, watch. I'm helping you out, Lance. Often, what you hear in your spirit is different from what you see in your situation. If I'm talking to you, talk to me. Is what you're sensing God saying to you different from what you're seeing in your situation? Because if so, stand firmly planted on what you sense spiritually, not on what you see physically. Servant saw nothing. He goes, I don't know, man. I don't know. Go again. I ain't quitting. I'm not quitting. Don't worry about him. He's young, dude. Look at him. He's got this. He's going to be tired. It's okay. Listen to me. You know how he looks tired when he gets up here? That's how some of you are in your life. You're just tired. You're tired of believing because you haven't seen any progress. You're tired of believing because God hadn't come through. You're tired of believing because every time you leave a church service, you leave pumped, excited, you go home, nothing. Some of you are living right in the middle of this season right now that you're looking at. You're tired. You want to quit. You want to stop standing on what you sent. Some of you, you've been without so long, without the miracles and the blessings that you can't even physically think the word abundance, heavy rain. All you know is drought. And you know what God's saying? God's saying to you, listen, here's what Elijah wanted. Elijah wanted the servant to come back and say, there's a cloud, there's a storm, it's bad. But here's what the servant said.
There's nothing.
Nothing. Elijah wanted a sign from God that there was something coming. Okay, but you know what God said? Shh. 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 You're not going to see a sign. And because you don't see a sign, what are you believing in now? Some of us, we want to see the evidence before we stand, but guess what? That's not called faith. Then you put your trust in the evidence. But when all you see is what, Lance?
Nothing.
You don't have a sign, but all you've got is a sound. The voice of God, the Spirit of God, the Holy Spirit whispering to you saying, I'm coming through. I'm making it. I'm healing. I'm working. I'm providing. Trust me. I know you can't see it because all you see is what, Lance?
Nothing.
And some of you are living in the nothing. But God is saying it's time to keep believing. Never allow your outward circumstance to affect your inward assurance. Thanks, Lance. Listen to me. You ever been in a season? Listen. You ever been in a season where God started speaking greatness over you, but you look and everywhere you're living your life is failing? You ever been in a season where God started speaking provision to you and blessings to you, but when you look, you got more bills on the desk than you can pay? You ever been in a situation where God started speaking a new job over you, but you're jobless and have been for 6 months? You ever been in a situation where God started speaking love and restoration over your marriage, but in your marriage, you can't even look at each other? In other words, there's nothing in your situation that says God's coming, except for there's a sound right here. Here's what I want to tell you. The old season, it's leaving today. I'm asking you to make a switch in your heart to expect God to come through. I know there's nothing. I know. That's what the servant said. There's nothing. But you know what God's speaking to you? No. There's something. There's something. You just can't see it. And some of you need to have faith today to believe what you sense spiritually over what you see physically. Never allow your outward circumstance to affect your inward assurance. But the devil's going to mess with you. You know what the devil's going to tell you? You can't. You won't. God's not coming through. It's been too long. If God was going to heal it, he would have healed it 5 years ago. The best time for the miracle would have been yesterday. And the enemy's going to whisper to you and tell you all the reasons why you need to stop believing in what you sense spiritually and start believing in what you see physically. But the just doesn't live by feelings, facts, finances. Come on. The just live by believe what you sense spiritually over what you see physically. Last. You better take a drink, Lance. Number 3 is the third thing we see in this story. You're going to love this. You got to realize God's moving in big ways, even if all you see is small evidence. Because at some point, your nothing is going to turn into not much. Come on, listen to me. Your nothing is going to turn into not much. Some of you need to be encouraged today And sometimes when God starts moving in your life, here's what you do. You start discounting. You're going, well, that's not what I was praying for. I mean, it's a little bit, but it's not much. I mean, it's just a little. Is this all God's going to do? And you give up right here after he's already showing you he's working. But here's the thing that you've got to recognize. You got to realize God's moving in big ways, even if you look and all you see is one flicker of hope. All you see is one person respond to your application. One person, one thing, one meal got taken care of. But God, I don't need a meal, I need a job. You start realizing in the small things, God's already showing you, I've got the big one taken care of. That's why the ravens brought Elijah food twice a day. He said, I'm going to take care of each meal so that you'll trust me in the small things, knowing I got the big things. So 4 times, again, 5 times, again, 6 times, again, Lance, go. 7 times, he sends them back and he says, go again. Go again. Listen to me, listen to me, listen to me. He sends him a 7th time. Why? He sends him again because what he senses spiritually is not what he's seeing physically. And he said, I will not give up until what I sense spiritually comes into realization. He sends him up again, and he goes again and again. 7 times he sends his servant up, and he sends him up there to be able to go check to see if the physical is matching the spiritual. But when the physical doesn't match the spiritual, listen to me. I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you. When the physical doesn't match the spiritual, you listen to the spiritual every time. But when you see something small, you realize God's moving in big ways and it's coming. And he sends him until the servant comes back. And then he walks over to him and he goes, you got to tell me something's happening. What'd you see? You're shaking your head.
It's something.
It's something.
It's not much.
Well, something's not nothing, but it's not much.
It's not much. Small.
It was nothing.
Yeah.
But now it's not much.
Right.
I need you to go. Go, because here's the miracle. See, here's the thing. Here's what he says. He says in verse 44, the 7th time the servant reported, I see a cloud as small as a man's hand. Do you remember the promise was abundance of rain? The promise was heavy rain. And the servant comes back and he goes, but all I see is a cloud. It's the cloud the size of a man's hand. It's nothing. It's not much. It's little. But Elijah said, this is it. This is the moment. I know you're looking at it and you're saying this is not much, but Elijah said, go and tell Ahab, hitch up those chariots and go down before the rain comes, because I'm here to tell you your marriage is being restored. I'm here to tell you that your healing is on its way. I'm here to tell you God is coming through. The job offer's coming through. I'm here to tell you your kids are coming back to God. Stay with me. You got to believe God's moving. I know it's just been a little bit. For some of you, you walked into this place this morning, and here's what you've been feeling for years. Nothing. Some of you recently, God's been doing not much, but it's something. You got to start moving on the not much, like God's ready to move in the big. Okay, stay. You ready? Because the nothing becomes not much. And then before you know it, it's going to be noticeably abundant in your life. And God is coming through with the miracle. He's coming through with the restoration. He's coming through with it. Why? Because it's never about what it is. It's always about what is it becoming. It's never about what it is. It's about what it is becoming. Sometimes God just lets you see the next step. For some of you, you walked in here, it's been nothing for years. For some of you, walk in here, there's been a little bit. But here's the thing. Even while we've been talking, I said, dial that switch. Turn that switch. Turn it. Start expecting. You started to feel something. It was little. It was just a little bit of hope for your marriage. It was almost so much that you're like, that's insignificant. That's not even important. You started feeling a little hope in your heart. You know what I'm talking about? You started feeling a little hope that maybe God's going to bring me a job. What if that was the little cloud the size of a man's hand? What if today, while I'm talking, you had nothing for years, but now God's saying there's this little cloud the size of a man's hand. And all it is hope. It's like this. It's like the little stone in the slingshot in David's hand. It was nothing. It was insignificant. What can a stone do against a giant? See, God uses the small things. He uses them, and he uses them, and he says, I'm coming through. Think about it. Something so insignificant. God wants to use it to give birth to a miracle. That's why in 1 Kings chapter 18, you ready? Elijah said it's time to move. That little thing, you better start rejoicing. You better start going right now. Quit waiting. Quit discounting it. Quit saying it's insignificant. Quit doing it. Because right now, there's a miracle coming. You ready? You ready? So here's what happens in verse 45 and 46. Meanwhile, Elijah said, go and tell them, hitch up your chariots. Go, because the rain's about to come. I'm telling you. But he had to believe it. He had to believe it. And he had to realize God's moving in big ways. Even when all he sees is small around him. It says, meanwhile, the sky grew black with clouds. Plural, big, black clouds. The wind rose and a heavy rain started falling, but it started with nothing and it moved to not much, insignificant, little. And then God said, here comes the miracle. Here comes the healing. Here comes the restoration. Here comes the job. Then the power of the Lord came on Elijah, tucking his cloak into his belt. He ran ahead of Ahab all the way to Jezreel. Watch. When God comes through, he helps you to do what God's called you to do, be who God's called you to be, and go where he called you to go. The Lord's coming through today, and it's going to start raining. I know for you it's been nothing for a long time. What you've been praying through has been not much, but I'm here to tell you the sky is growing black with clouds. The wind is picking up, and the heavens are opening. See, not all storms are bad. Here comes the rain, and it's going to heal your land. Here comes the rain, and it's going to heal your land. Here comes the rain, and it's going to heal your land. See, God came through. It wasn't much, but it was enough. And what God's saying today is, if you'll trust me, if you'll believe, I'm going to move in a big way. And I believe with all my heart that God is going to rain down blessings on your marriage today. I've been praying for it. Listen, I've been carrying your marriage and your finances in my heart all week. It's been a tough week because I've been carrying your pain and your brokenness. You got to hear it.
With a new future to tell.
God is writing a new future today, right here, right now.
Season is over.
It's over.
There is a
Listen, God told me to tell you the dry season is over today. But you got to do your part. You be faithful. You give, you tithe, you love, you worship, you serve.